Congressional Republicans have been on their back foot when it comes to January 6th, with an intentional refusal to accept the facts that led to the violent insurrection on the nation's capital. See this latest attempt by Louisiana Republican Clay Higgins, in which he accuses the FBI of entrapping rioters in the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. Higgins said on a podcast that ghost buses took undercover FBI agents to Washington, D.C. They posed as Trump supporters, and then they tricked the mob rioters into carrying out the violent assault on the U.S. Capitol. Yeah. Our friend Luke Broadwater, writing in the New York Times, put it this way: even by a conspiracy theorist standards, the wild claims made by Higgins stand out. And if you think he's just another loon, nope. Not in Mike Johnson's caucus. More from the New York Times, quote, far from relegating him, Higgins, to the fringe of their increasingly fractured conference, House Republicans have elevated him. Of course they have. They made him the chairman of the subcommittee overseeing border enforcement, and Speaker Mike Johnson named him one of 11 impeachment managers tasked with trying to remove the Homeland Security Secretary from office in a Senate trial set to take place next week. We're back with Donnie and the Rev. I mean, Rev, they're playing government people, but they don't do anything for the people.
Their people are not on the agenda. I mean, they're playing this kind of sportsman-like game, like this is some card game or some table moving game like chess or checkers, and they're not even thinking about people. If you look at the fact that this Congress has been the most ineffective Congress in terms of passing legislation or getting anything done, that you even have one or two Republicans saying, what are we doing here? What have we gotten done? This is no longer the issue, and I think that's his point. People are not even looking at that anymore. We are being driven now by our emotions and not thinking and not looking at what's going on. And I think that that is what is dangerous and what scares someone like me, because when you have people that are not thinking, the loudest voices or the flashiest kind of con man, which Donald Trump is, can lead them astray. That's how this happens.
Well, the other way it happens is Republicans successfully move the Overton window faster than Democrats can get themselves in a room and do the things that Democrats value, build consensus, make a strategy. The fact is that January 6th was a deadly insurrection in which Trump supporters beat cops with flagpoles, full stop. That's it. You don't need to tell the whole story of January 6th. I don't know who this guy is. I've never heard of him. I've never seen him on social media. He's telling lunatic stories because even Karl Rove knows that if the Democrats focus on this, January 6th is a huge loser for Republicans. Let me show you what he had to say.
If they were smart, they'd take the January 6th and go hard at it. And they would say, he wants to pardon these people who attacked our Capitol. And what those people did when they violently attacked the Capitol in order to stop a constitutionally mandated meeting of the Congress to accept the results of the Electoral College is a stain on our history. And every one of those sons of bitches who did that, we ought to find them, try them, and send them to jail. And one of the critical mistakes made in this campaign is that Donald Trump has now said, I'm going to pardon those people because they're hostages. No, they're not. They're thugs. So, you know, look, I'm a Republican. I don't want to have a Democrat president. I want to have a Republican president. But we're facing as a country a decision, and everybody gets to make it, as to what kind of leadership we're going to have. And to me, it is a mistake on the part of the Trump campaign to allow the president's impulses to identify himself with the people who assaulted the Capitol rather than people who stand for law and order.
Yeah. I don't care what people think of Karl Rove. The only problem with what he said is he's addressing the problem with the Trump campaign. The problem with the Biden campaign is that there is timidity. When Trump goes to a funeral of a law enforcement official, Joe Biden should have the people that support him. I mean, Officer Sicknick's family was calling the press. I mean, it shouldn't be political, but it is, because Donald Trump made it political, and there's still timidity in the Biden coalition to take on the issues where Trump is so audacious that lifelong Republican strategist Karl Rove called BS on him.
Here's the, we can obviously criticize Trump, that goes without saying. We can criticize Biden. What I still can't get at, and it's not so different than the economy, why doesn't this stuff register? People have seen this videotape.
You can't look at it that way.
Okay,
on election day, people care about what you tell them to care about.
Okay, but I'm asking, in order to, but this is the $1 trillion question. In order to understand why it's not registering, we have to figure out what else is going on here. I'm a marketer, okay, and I'm trying to sway the person in front of me. And here's this tape. Look what Trump wrought on us. They killed cops. They tried to take over the government. Look at and it doesn't register. So what I keep bringing up the question, because until we answer that question, the facts and the videotape and the reality is not real. So I wish we actually had sociologists at this table, anthropologists at this table, psychologists at this table.
Well, let me give you someone in that category that you and I have talked to together. Sarah Longwell. She said Republican voters are looking for permission structures.
Yes.
I would say that Karl Rove just gave Democrats a permission structure for pursuing the hell out of January 6th as a winning political strategy.
I keep coming back to that something is not registering. And I don't, by the way, I've sat with dozens and dozens of people and said, January 6th, look at what he caused. And they go, yeah. You know, there are some crazy people. There's an irrationality that I have to think we have to start, the people that believe in what we believe and are trying to sway minds and hearts, there's got to be a different way into the psyche, because to your point, people are going to believe what I have the Annette Bening thing. People vote for what I tell them to vote for. But something different.
Election day, people care about what I tell them. And I mean, that's an activist mind as well. I mean, activists don't get what they want in the first year of an effort, or the first 10 years sometimes. Sometimes it's 40 years down the road. I mean, the idea that 8 months out, it doesn't mean anything. I don't accept that. I worked on campaigns where we were slogging away until the last 12 hours.
No, I'm not saying it doesn't matter. I'm saying,
how do you make them care? I know what you're saying.
I think you're right. And when you brought it to activists, I was thinking in my own mind, we had said for years, we need police reform, and for people to be held accountable. We're for fighting against crime, because we're the majority of the people becoming victims in our community. But police should not, those that get out of line ought to be dealt with. It took them seeing a tape of someone with a knee on the neck, and they thought about it, that could be me. Mm-hmm. And I think that is what we are facing. When will the moment come to, because I agree with Donnie, they're not dealing with it, where they say, wait a minute, that's me that is there. I think a lot of the mistake that the Democratic Party has made, and those with Biden, is it's beltway talk, it's abstract.
Totally.
You've got to make people understand this is you. That's your kid that went to school and tried to become something, that was getting beaten up January 6th. That's your kid that was the officer that was standing there that could have got killed. Saying you ran Mike Pence down the hall doesn't make it personal. If you pet the people in the uniform and make it personal, people start saying, wait a minute, and you're excusing that, Trump? I think you've got to put it in everybody's living room and bedroom that we're talking about you. We're not talking about what happens in D.C.
Hey everyone, MSNBC has a new and improved app. You'll get real-time alerts and analysis, live blogs, in-depth essays, video highlights, and the best 2024 election coverage. Download the new MSNBC app. Here's how to do it. You tap on the App Store on your phone. You hit search on the bottom right corner. You type in MSNBC. You click on the MSNBC app. You click on Get or the cloud icon and enjoy it.